We begin this hour in Ukraine, where Russian forces continue to be sent in wave after wave to try and overwhelm Ukrainian defenders in the city of Bakhmut. The World War I style Russian tactics is why this battle has been described as a meat grinder. Small Russian advances have come with a staggering loss of life. And while many have questioned the strategic value of what is left of this city, both sides have doubled down on their commitment to control it. This video, posted on social media, appears to show a Ukrainian combat vehicle coming under fire from fighters with the Russian Wagner mercenary group. Elsewhere, Ukrainian forces have been able to hold their defensive lines. This video appears to show Russian soldiers in retreat from the city's outskirts. Russia claims to have captured settlements around Bakhmut, and the Russian defense minister says that victory here will open the way to further advances in eastern Ukraine. There is no doubt this battle has become a symbolic one, but what of the strategic value? President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke with CNN about the decision to continue defending this city.
This is tactical for us. We understand that after Bakhmut, they could go further. They could go to Kramatorsk, to Slavyansk. It would be an open road for the Russians after Bakhmut to other towns in Ukraine, in the Donetsk direction, in the east of Ukraine.
Zelensky also reacted to a disturbing video released on social media showing an unarmed Ukrainian soldier being executed. He says the video shows Russia's attitude towards prisoners of war, saying they do not have any laws, nor do they respect anything. CNN's Melissa Bell has more details now, but we have a warning. Some viewers may find the images they're about to see disturbing.
Glory to Ukraine were his last words. Timofey Shadura was his name. His courage and his silhouette made iconic overnight by his brutal execution. An officer from his brigade telling CNN that his death will not go unpunished.
Дуже боляче сприйняв таку варварську поведінку нашого ворога. Помста буде невідворотною. Так, Збройні сили України помстяться за смерть нашого товариша.
The fate of Bakhmut still in the balance. With dozens more attacks to the north of the besieged city and heavy losses to the Russian side, say Ukrainian authorities. But efforts to encircle Bakhmut praised by the Russian defense minister after an unusual trip to his soldiers in the occupied territories of Ukraine.
This city is an important defense hub for Ukrainian troops in Donbass. Taking it under control will allow further offensive actions deep into the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine.
The town also at the heart of a tussle between the Russian army and Wagner, the mercenary group planting its flag closer to the center of Bakhmut. Much of the fighting now street to street, soldier to soldier. As civilians cower in their basements, fewer than 4,000 now, say Ukrainian authorities, including 38 children. The ferocity of the artillery and mortar fire that continue to pound the city, making it hard even for soldiers to get out. And as Moscow closes in, more claims of so-called Ukrainian terrorist activity, with staunch Moscow ally Alexander Lukashenko announcing the capture of a Ukrainian-Russian national accused of trying to sabotage a Russian surveillance plane at a Minsk airfield, without presenting further evidence.
We identified and detained him. To date, more than 20 accomplices who are on the territory of Belarus have been detained.
Only last week, Moscow accused Ukrainian saboteurs of opening fire on civilians inside Russia. But even as the war of words widens, all eyes are very much on Bakhmut and whether this symbol of Ukrainian resilience will finally fall, even as a new one is born. Melissa Bell, CNN, Kyiv.
Professor Matthew Smith is the Director of International Affairs at the University of New Haven. He is an expert on defense and intelligence, Russia, Ukraine, and US foreign policy. Welcome back from Kyiv. Glad you're with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so on this question, is Bakhmut worth the blood being spilled? We just heard from the president of Ukraine. He said that if the city falls, it could open the way for the Russians to go to Kramatorsk, to Slavyansk, and open the road, he said, to other towns in the Donetsk direction in the east of Ukraine. You know, for the most part, the fall of any city would leave the way open to other cities, I guess. But the US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, told reporters on Monday that the Ukrainians could reposition to the west of Bakhmut to terrain that was defensible, and he added this.
I would not view that as as an operational or a strategic setback. I think it's more of a symbolic value than it is strategic and operational value. So the fall of Bakhmut won't necessarily mean that the Russians have changed the tide of this fight. I mean, I think it will continue to be contested.
So why is this being talked about solely in terms of either stand your ground or do a full withdrawal or full retreat? This is not a binary choice. There are other options here.
Well, first of all, I think you have to, give respect to the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. If our president would have said that a given point on the map is of strategic importance, we wouldn't be questioning it that much. So I think that Zelensky must have a point because he's Zelensky. The question is, where does he get that point from, right? Is Bakhmut strategically important because of where it is on the map, right? Or is General Austin correct about that, which is to say that if you lose Bakhmut, there are fallback positions where you can still defend from, right? Or is it symbolically important? I think clearly it is. Or is it important for a third reason, which is that it's essentially become a trap to kill Russians in, to get Russians to expend ammunition in, and to lose, vehicles and other material in, so that whatever happens with the color of the map in a few days, the Russians will have lost far more than the Ukrainians will, and that is what makes it strategically important.
Okay, so with that in mind, after a recent visit to Bakhmut, Michael Kaufman, a US-based defense analyst, he posted on Twitter, the defense of Bakhmut achieved a great deal, expending Russian manpower and ammunition, but strategies can reach points of diminishing returns. And given Ukraine is trying to husband resources for an offensive, it could impede the success of a more important operation. According to Kaufman, Ukrainian forces are starting to see heavy losses in Bakhmut on par with the Russians. So could both sides be putting their overall war goals, in doubt here?
Right. Well, it's always the possibility that both sides are wrong, that both sides are sort of being driven by, emotions, right, and not by kind of rational reasons in this position. But I think what you have to recognize is that Ukraine is gearing up, is getting ready for this counteroffensive. They're waiting for these battalion-sized units to come back into the country after, getting Western training. And if they can hold on in Bakhmut, and if they can continue to drain Russian resources there, these are great places to bring those new units into. They're great places to start that counteroffensive from.
I want you to listen to the Russian defense minister on Ukrainian military losses, which, according to the TASS news agency, he claims are up 40% just last month. Here he is.
Western countries are intensifying the supply of armory and military hardware to Ukraine. They are expanding training programs for Ukrainian army personnel. However, NATO's support of the Kyiv regime does not translate into success for Ukraine on the battlefield. On the contrary, we observe an increase in the losses of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Okay, so a couple of things here. The last few months for the Ukrainians have been mostly, as you mentioned, about holding ground against this, Russian spring offensive. But apart from Bakhmut, where else are the Russian forces making any serious effort to try and move forward? Is there anywhere?
I mean, the short answer is they're not. They're continuing to sort of engage in localized movement in Kherson, and that's about it. So, that really raises the question of what's going on behind those lines. It brings up the question we've been looking at for months now, which is the capacity of Russian officers to plan offensive operations at all, and the morale of Russian soldiers to execute on those offensive operations. And it's not at all clear that they're able to do either.
And just very quickly, so once those new weapons arrive and the newly trained troops are back in country, is this shaping up to be a possible rout of the Russians by the Ukrainians?
I wouldn't call it a rout. The Russians have too much mass, right? Too many men, too much material to be routed. But the turning point in this war into the next phase of this war is the ability of Ukrainian armed forces to engage in combined arms maneuver. That is to say, to fight like NATO fights, to fight like the West fights, to fight from a position of having superior tactics and then superior operational planning at the operational and the strategic level in order to make the exploits with fewer men and with fewer weapons, but better trained men, right, and better weapons. to achieve those operational outcomes that they're trying for, right? They're going to fight Russia in a different way than they've been fighting the whole war. So if that training sticks, and if they're able to bring it to bear on the battlefield, the Russians will have seen nothing like it before.
Wait and see what happens. Matthew Smith, thanks so much. Good to see you.
All right, you too.